Good morning.
Morning.
So lovely to be back with you again. My grateful thanks to Liz and to Sheila for somehow the service comes together. We meet, we email a little bit, and boom, it's there. So thank you so much. For our reading this morning, I'm reading a quote from Howard Zinn, and it appears in a book called Life After Doom, Wisdom and Courage for a World Falling Apart by Brian McLaren. But these are Howard Zinn's words. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act. And at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now, as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, this is itself a marvelous victory. So I've been looking forward to being with you this morning because it's so lovely to be sitting here together during the winter solstice, the day of the year with the fewest hours of light and the greatest number of hours of darkness. Early on in human history, the gradual darkening of the seasons was a fearful time. Crops died off, animals hibernated and disappeared, especially in the northern hemisphere, when the sun seemed almost to disappear, giving up both its warmth and its light. It was a scary, scary time. But with the consistent unfolding of the seasons, hope became part of the human experience, as ancient rituals celebrating the sun's dependable returns and the patterns were discerned. Well, the movement between darkness and light in human affairs is not quite so predictable. Our sitting in this present darkness is filled with prejudice, fear, disconnection, uncertainty. So there's no doubt that we are living through a different time of human-induced darkness, even as we sit together and celebrate the predictability of this particular winter solstice. The headlines are filled every day with violence, hatred, a supreme lack of empathy. So talking about choosing hope can seem a bit Pollyanna-ish on the darkest of days. And yet, it is at the darkest time of the year that with our ancestors, we're challenged with exploring our fears and our anxieties, confronting them and embracing them if we are to live lives of wholeness and creativity. And so we speak of hope as the Hanukkah candles are being lighted all over the world in spite of the Bondi Beach massacre. We speak of hope when the Advent candles of peace, joy, love, and hope are being lighted even as we mourn Brown University students. I am sure that last week's candlelight service was a beautiful reminder of our need to both create and to bring light into the world. each candle symbolizing a tiny spark of hope in the midst of the almost impenetrable darkness. But what is this thing called hope? Roshi Joan Halifax is a wise teacher in the Zen Buddhist tradition, and she makes a distinction between ordinary hope and wise hope. We might think of ordinary hope as a hope that is based on the desire for a specific outcome. I may hope that in the halls of power and empire, that our leaders will suddenly see the light and begin to exercise compassionate wisdom in their deliberations. This kind of hope has an expectation of fulfillment that sort of always hovers in the background. But this kind of hope also carries the shadow of fear that what I hope for will not be fulfilled. In Buddhist thought, this kind of qualified hope becomes a form of suffering because it always has a hidden partner, a kind of unacknowledged dread that our hopes will not be fulfilled in the way that we wish. When we listen to the news or read the headlines, when we bear with a tragedy, when we hold the situations in the thoughts and prayers of our hearts, and we hope for the cessation of the violence, all of this is ordinary hope. And deep within, we may have to acknowledge that this kind of hope does not bear life. Roshi Joan offers a different take on hope, hope that she calls wise hope. It's the kind of hope, she says, that is sourced in surprise and imagination. So she tells this story about a French surrealist poet named Robert Desnos. I've never heard of him. I don't know whether you have or not, but he's a surrealist poet. And the story that she tells is adapted from Norman Fisher's book, The World Could Be Otherwise. The story might give us a glimpse of what Roshi Joan means by wise hope that is sourced in surprise and imagination. So here's the story. Robert Desnos was Jewish. During World War II, he joined the French underground resistance movement in their fight against the Nazis. Unfortunately, he was captured and sent to a variety of concentration camps. One day, Desnos was crowded with other men into a truck that transports prisoners from the barracks. The men understood where they were going. The trucks always left the barracks full and returned empty. Their destination was the gas chambers and the ovens. When the truck arrived at its terrible destination, the prisoners slowly, silently descended, almost as if in a dream or a trance. The guards also were silent, unable to avoid catching the prisoner's mood. Suddenly, the poet Desnos jumped up, grabbed the hand of the man behind him. Astonishingly, his nose almost touching the man's hand, he began to read the man's palm. "I am so excited for you," he exclaimed happily. "You're going to have 3 children, a beautiful wife, wealth. So fantastic, so wonderful." Desnos' excitement was contagious. First, one man, then another, in shock and bewilderment, thrust out his hand. Each one received a similar blessing and prediction: long life, children, wealth, beautiful surroundings, peace, happiness, success, joy unending. As Desnos read palm after palm, The atmosphere of the moment, drop by drop at first, and then, as if in a sudden tidal wave breaking all at once, was completely transformed. Prisoners were smiling, laughing, clapping one another on the back. Their burden lifted, their reality transformed. The guards were confused. The reality that they had been living a moment ago had been somehow suddenly cast into doubt. They were no longer sure what was real and what was not. Perhaps their better natures, long suppressed in an effort to conform to the Nazi madness that defined their world, long numb to the grief, the guilt, and the horror, perhaps their better natures were stirred by Desnos' commitment to his absurd, and perhaps not absurd, vision. Who knows? The guards were in any case so undone by the scene in front of them that they no longer knew what to do. Makes me laugh, the absurdity of it all. They could not go through with the executions. So they marched the prisoners back into the truck and sent them back to the barracks. Through this spontaneous, unprescribed moment of unbounded imagination and the brilliant spirit of wise hope, Desnos and these men were saved from execution. This strange and curious story maybe helps us to understand why hope and imagination as a unity is so powerful and so wonderful. To begin with, we know that ordinary hope is based in wanting an outcome that could very well be different from what we want to happen. Was Desnos conventionally and ordinarily hopeful? Probably not. Given the point at which this story begins, there's not much room for ordinary hope. Rather, it appears that this poet's imaginative heart broke open as he was facing death, and his actions were totally astonishing, not only to others, but also to him. In the most threatening of circumstances, he lived and acted as we think human beings ought to act, with great imagination and creativity. So we have to ask, what does it mean to exercise wise hope in our fragile and fraught world? Can we actually live with hope in the darkness? Wise hope means that we open ourselves to what we do not know, what we cannot know, that we open ourselves to not knowing, and then act from a place of astonishment, surprise, and imagination right in the present moment. Roshi Joan invites us to understand that wise hope appears through our courage to be in the radical uncertainty of the time in which we live, and to exercise the element of surprise and imagination when we let go of ordinary hope for a desired outcome. When we sit in this radical uncertainty, this willingness to live in the discomfort of not knowing, realizing that we really don't know what will happen next, this is when wise hope comes alive. It comes alive in a kind of groundless landscape between what is improbable and what is possible. And in this groundless landscape of imagination, the imperative to act rises up. If we're willing to sit in the uncertainty, the not knowing what the future holds, if we're willing to be surprised with the creativity of our imaginations of the future, then, as Howard Zinn reminds us, To be hopeful in bad times is not foolishly romantic. If we act in however a small way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of present moments. And to live now, as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, this is in itself a marvelous victory. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shined." Isaiah's hope was not an ordinary hope. His hope was based in wisdom and in confidence that bearing with the darkness and uncertainty empowers imaginative and surprising human creativity. We each have a Robert Desnos within, waiting, full of spontaneous surprise and imagination, perhaps almost ready to act in this present moment, knowing that just this much is an astonishing victory for hope. Perhaps we can indeed live with hope in the darkness. May it be so.